I'm Megan Riley, and I'm 35 years old. I own a real estate company in Seattle worth $50 million built from nothing but grit and sleepless nights. 18 years ago, my parents, my mom, Christine Larson, and her husband, Mark Peterson, kicked me out of their house at 17 so they could focus on their new kids. They packed my stuff in trash bags, handed me $500, and told me to figure it out. Now, after all this time with zero contact, my mom's back demanding I pay for their kids' college tuition like I owe them anything. The people who threw me away for their shiny new family think they can waltz into my life and claim my money. This all started with an email that hit my inbox last Tuesday morning. I was in my office sipping coffee, going through contracts for a new eco-friendly housing project we're launching in Bellevue. My assistant had just left to grab blueprints when my phone pinged. I glanced at the screen expecting another client follow-up, but the sender's name stopped me. Cold, Christine Larson, my mom. My heart slammed against my chest, and I set my mug down so hard coffee sloshed onto my desk. 18 years of silence, not a single call text or birthday card, and now she's emailing me. I stared at the subject line Family Matters and felt this mix of rage and curiosity burning in my gut. What could she possibly want? I didn't open it right away. My hands were shaking and I needed to breathe to think. I got up, paced to the window, and looked out at the city, trying to ground myself. This was the life I'd built: high-rise office, my name on the door, a team that respected me. Christine had no part in it. She didn't get to just show up now. But that email sat there like a ticking bomb, and I knew I couldn't ignore it forever. So I sat back down, took a deep breath, and clicked. The message was short, too short for someone who hadn't spoken to her daughter in nearly 2 decades. Megan, I've been so proud watching your success. We need to talk about some family issues. I'm in Seattle this week, staying at the Fairmont. Can we meet? Mom? That's it. No apology, no explanation, just this casual assumption I'd drop everything to see her. And calling herself Mom. Like she'd earned that title, I laughed out loud, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed in my empty office. Proud of my success, she didn't even know me anymore. But the family issues part gnawed at me. What did she mean? Was someone sick, broke, dying? I hated that I cared enough to wonder. I forwarded the email to my therapist, Dr. Patricia Sullivan, and shot her a text asking for an emergency session. Then I called my best friend, Heather Brooks, who's been my rock since high school. She picked up on the first ring, and before she could even say hello, I blurted, "My mom emailed me. After 18 years, she wants to meet." Heather went quiet for a second, then let out a string of curses that would have made a sailor blush. "What does that woman want from you now?" "After what she did, Megan, don't let her mess with your head." I told her I didn't know yet, but needed to figure it out. She insisted on coming over later to talk it through, and I felt a little steadier knowing she'd have my back. That night, alone in my apartment, I kept rereading the email, each word slicing deeper. I remembered the day they kicked me out clear as if it happened yesterday. I was 17, a junior in high school, coming home from a late study session at the library. I walked up to our house, a nice suburban place in Redmond, with a big lawn and a 2-car garage, and found my stuff on the porch. 3 trash bags, my backpack, and a cheap duffel. My key didn't work in the lock. I knocked, confused, thinking it was a mistake, but Mark opened the door, blocking the entrance like a bouncer. "We've made a decision," he said, "all business, no warmth. With the new baby coming, we need your room for a nursery. You're 17. Megan, time to be independent." I stood there frozen, my brain struggling to process. Christine appeared behind him, pregnant with Lucas, their youngest, and she wouldn't look at me. "You're strong, honey," she mumbled, staring at the floor. "You'll be fine on your own. Lots of kids your age are working, living by themselves. Fine on my own. I was still in high school, no job, no plan, and they were throwing me out for their new kids. Brandon, Kayla, and the baby on the way." I begged, my voice breaking. "Where am I supposed to go? How do I finish school?" Mark handed me an envelope with $500 in cash, saying it was enough for a room rental and told me to talk to my school counselor. Christine added, "We called your dad, but Dan's not in a position to help." Of course he wasn't. He'd bailed when I was 6. I asked about my grandma Ellie who lived in Tacoma, but Mark shut that down. "She's too old to deal with a teenager." Rain started falling, soaking my bags, and I felt like the universe was laughing at me. I asked to use the bathroom to call someone anything, and Mark sighed like I was inconveniencing him, but let me in for 5 minutes. Inside the house was already erasing me. My photos were gone from the walls, and Kayla was in my room picking through my stuff saying Dad said I could have your bookshelf. I locked myself in the bathroom, texted Heather. "They're kicking me out." "Can you come?" She replied instantly. "On my way with Mom. Hold tight." When I came out, Christine was alone in the hallway, still avoiding my eyes. "Megan." "This is for the best," she said, like she was convincing herself. "You'll understand when you're older, when you have kids." I whispered. "I'm your kid," but she just turned away. Outside, I sat on the porch guarding my soggy bags until Heather and her mom Nancy pulled up. Nancy's face was pure fury when she saw me, but I begged her not to confront them. I just wanted to leave. They loaded my stuff into their SUV, and as we drove off, I saw Christine at the window, one hand on her belly, the other half raised like she might wave. I looked away. That night at Heather's house, I broke down. Her parents, Nancy and Tom, set me up in their guest room, and Tom, a lawyer, started talking about legal options like emancipation. I was too numb to process it. I tried calling Christine one last time, but it went to voicemail. Then a text came through. "This is for the best. Love, Mom." That was the last I heard from her until now. Sitting in my apartment staring at her email, I felt that same 17-year-old hurt bubbling up, but I wasn't that kid anymore. I'd built a life, a company, a family of my own, choosing Heather, Justin, Susan. Christine didn't get to disrupt that. I decided to meet her, but on my terms. I replied, suggesting a coffee shop downtown Neutral Ground Friday morning. I needed answers, and I needed to face her not as the scared teenager she'd thrown away, but as the woman who'd made it despite her. As I hit send, a calm settled over me. Whatever she wanted, I'd handle it my way. After I sent that email agreeing to meet Christine at the coffee shop, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept spinning back to those first days after they kicked me out at 17, living out of trash bags, trying to piece together a life. That's where this story picks up how I went from a scared teenager with $500 to building a real estate empire only to have my mom pop back up with her hand out. I moved in with Heather's family that night after they picked me up from Christine and Mark's porch. Heather's parents, Nancy and Tom, didn't hesitate. They gave me their guest room, bought me a proper suitcase, and told me I could stay as long as I needed. Tom, a lawyer, sat me down the next morning and explained emancipation, saying what Christine and Mark did was abandonment, plain and simple. I was overwhelmed, barely able to think straight, but their kindness kept me from falling apart. Still, I couldn't shake the shame of being a burden, so I made a promise to myself I'd never depend on anyone again. Within a week, I was pounding the pavement, applying for jobs anywhere within walking distance of Heather's house. I landed 2 gigs, morning shifts at a diner near the high school, flipping pancakes before the breakfast rush, and evenings at a small bookstore shelving novels and ringing up customers. Between schoolwork and studying, I was pulling 16-hour days, collapsing into bed at midnight, only to wake up at 5. Heather used to joke I was turning into a robot, but I didn't care. Every dollar I earned was a step toward proving I didn't need Christine or Mark. School became my lifeline. I threw myself into my classes, especially architecture, because designing buildings felt like creating something permanent, something no one could take away. My teachers noticed. Ms. Larson, my history teacher, started slipping me extra assignments to keep me busy, and Mr. Grant, the math guy, pushed me to join the engineering club. They saw me, really saw me, when my own parents didn't. I kept my grades up, aiming for a 4.0 because college was my ticket out. I spent hours in the library researching scholarships, filling out applications until my eyes burned. Heather helped me proofread essays, and Nancy drove me to interviews, but I kept my plans quiet. I didn't want to jinx it. The hardest part wasn't the work or the exhaustion, it was the moments that hit out of nowhere. I'd be pouring coffee at the diner, and some mom would come in with her teenage daughter laughing about prom dresses or college visits, and it'd feel like a punch to the chest. I'd have to duck into the backsplash water on my face and tell myself to keep moving. One night, I broke down in Heather's room, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. "Why wasn't I enough for them?" I choked out. Heather hugged me tight, saying, "They're the ones who failed, not you." That became my mantra: keep going. Prove them wrong. By senior year, I was juggling 2 jobs, a full course load, and college applications. My counselor, Ms. Torres, warned me I was burning out, but I couldn't slow down. She pushed me to join the debate team to boost my application, so I cut back diner hours and squeezed in practices. It paid off. I got a full-ride scholarship to the University of Washington for architecture, covering tuition, housing, everything. When I walked across the stage at graduation, Heather's family cheered so loud I could hear them over the crowd. I scanned the audience stupidly, hoping Christine might show up. She didn't. That stung, but I shoved it down and focused on what was next. College was a grind, but I loved it. I lived in a cramped off-campus apartment with Lauren, a biology major who became my first real friend outside Heather. To save money, I cooked cheap meals, lots of rice and beans, and bought clothes from thrift stores, piecing together outfits that looked professional enough for internships. My professor, Susan Granger, changed everything. She saw my designs in a freshman studio class and pulled me aside, saying, "You've got a knack for sustainable architecture, don't waste it." She got me into her mentorship program, connecting me with firms in Seattle. I started interning at a small company sophomore year, drafting plans for eco-friendly condos, learning the business from the ground up. That internship turned into a part-time job, then a full-time offer after graduation. I climbed fast, project manager by 25, senior consultant by 28. I saved every penny, living like I was still broke, and by 30 I had enough to start my own firm. Justin Hayes, a guy I met at a green building conference, became my business partner. We scraped together funds, me maxing out credit cards, him calling every contact he had, and launched Riley Hayes Properties, focusing on sustainable housing. Our big break came when Ed Marshall, a retired developer, invested $2 million after seeing our pitch. That let us hire a team, lease an office, and land our first major contract. By 35, we were worth $50 million with projects across the Pacific Northwest. Through it all, I carried the weight of what Christine and Mark did. Therapy with Dr. Patricia Sullivan helped. She taught me to name the hurt, to stop blaming myself. Heather, Justin, Susan. They became my family, the ones who showed up when it mattered. I thought I'd left Christine behind for good, but that email from her cracked something open. The night before our meeting, I was pacing my apartment trying to prep myself when my phone buzzed again. Another message from Christine. My stomach dropped as I opened it. "Megan, I'm so glad you agreed to meet. It's about Brandon, Kayla, and Lucas. They're at critical points in their lives, and we need your help. Mark's business is struggling, and without support, the kids' futures are at risk. Can we discuss this Friday? I know you'll do what's right for family." I read it twice. My hands shaking with anger. Help with Mark's business for the kids' futures. The same kids they replaced me with. This wasn't just about college tuition. It was about bailing out Mark's failing real estate venture, the one I'd heard whispers about through industry contacts. He'd sunk money into flashy condos that nobody wanted, and now they were coming to me to clean up their mess. The audacity made my blood boil. I forwarded the text to Heather, who called immediately, furious. "They're using the kids as an excuse to get your money. Don't fall for it, Megan." I told her I wasn't falling for anything. I'd meet them, hear them out, but I'd be ready. I spent the next day with Patricia, working through my anger, planning how to stay calm and in control. By Thursday night, I'd picked out my outfit, a sharp blazer and slacks, professional, unyielding, and rehearsed what I'd say. I wasn't that 17-year-old anymore. Whatever Christine and Mark wanted, I'd face them head on, but something told me this was going to be messier than I expected. Friday morning came too fast, and I was sitting in a corner booth at the coffee shop downtown gripping my espresso like it was a lifeline. I'd picked this place for a reason, public enough to keep things civil, private enough for the conversation I knew was coming. Christine and Mark were due any minute, and my stomach was in knots. Not because I was scared, but because I was furious. After 18 years of silence, they thought they could waltz in, ask me to bail out Mark's failing real estate business, and use their kids, Brandon, Kayla, and Lucas, as some kind of emotional leverage. I wasn't here to play nice. I was here to set boundaries, and they weren't going to like it. Christine walked in first, spotting me right away. She looked older than I remembered, her hair dyed a shade too dark, her smile nervous but practiced. Mark trailed behind, heavier than he'd been, his suit slightly wrinkled like he'd pulled it out of the laundry basket. They slid into the booth across from me, and Christine reached out like she might touch my hand, but stopped when she saw my expression. "Megan, you look amazing," she said, her voice too bright, like we were catching up at a reunion. I didn't smile back. "Let's get to it," I said, keeping my tone even. "What do you want?" Mark cleared his throat, leaning forward with that same self-important air he'd had when he kicked me out at 17. "We're here about the kids." He started pulling out a folder stuffed with papers. "Brandon's headed to UCLA, Kayla's looking at Stanford, and Lucas is a junior, already eyeing film schools. College costs are through the roof, $70,000 a year minimum per kid. My business took a hit with some bad investments, and we're stretched thin." He slid the folder toward me like I was supposed to open it and nod along. "You've done well, Megan. We thought you could help out for family." I let the word family hang in the air, my fingers tightening around my cup. "Help out how exactly?" I asked, forcing him to say it. Christine jumped in, her voice softer, almost pleading. "We need financial support, Megan, for the kids' tuition and to keep Mark's business afloat. If it goes under, we can't support them. You know how important education is?" I laughed, a sharp sound that made them both flinch. "You're asking me to pay for your kids' college and save Mark's company? The same kids you replaced me with. The same company you sank with bad deals." Mark's face reddened, but he kept his cool, leaning back like he was negotiating a contract. "That's a harsh way to put it. We made tough choices back then, sure, but look at you now, successful, thriving. You wouldn't be where you are if we'd held your hand." I felt my jaw clench, the old hurt surging up, but I wasn't going to let them twist this. "You didn't make tough choices," I said, my voice low and steady. "You threw me out at 17 with $500, no plan, no home. I succeeded, despite you, not because of you." Christine shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting to the table. "Megan, I know it was hard, but we were starting a new family. We had to prioritize." I cut her off. "Prioritize? You mean erase me? You packed my life in trash bags and told me to figure it out. And now you're here acting like I owe you, because I didn't fall apart." My voice was rising, and I caught a few heads turning, but I didn't care. Mark leaned in, his tone sharp. "Lower your voice. We're not here to rehash the past. We need help now, $200,000 a year, maybe more, to cover tuition and stabilize things. You can afford it." That's when it hit me. They weren't just asking for tuition. This was a shakedown, and they were banking on guilt to get it. I took a sip of my espresso, buying time to calm the rage boiling inside, and then I went for it. "Before we talk numbers, let's clear something up. When you kicked me out, I had a savings account, $3,000 I'd saved from birthdays, odd jobs, everything. It was for college. Where did that money go?" Christine's face went pale, and Mark froze, his eyes narrowing. The silence was deafening, and I knew I'd struck a nerve. Christine stammered, I don't know what you're talking about. That was so long ago." But Mark cut in too quick. "If there was an account, it probably went to household expenses. Raising kids isn't cheap, Megan." I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. "Household expenses." You mean you took my college fund to pay for your new life with Brandon, Kayla, and Lucas? You stole from me, then threw me out. Christine's hands were shaking now and she reached for her water glass, spilling a little. It wasn't stealing, she whispered. We were struggling. We needed it. I felt like I'd been slapped. All those years I'd wondered what happened to that money, blamed myself for not checking the account sooner. Now I knew they'd taken it, used it to prop up their perfect family while I was scraping by on diner tips. My voice trembled with anger, but I kept it controlled. You had no right. That was mine, and you left me with nothing. Mark scoffed, tossing his napkin on the table. This is ridiculous. Are you helping the kids or not? They're your family, Megan. Your brother and sister. They're your kids, I shot back. And don't call them my family. You made it clear I wasn't part of yours when you changed the locks. Christine tried to play the mom card, her voice cracking. Megan, please. The past is the past. Can't we move forward? The kids deserve a chance, and you're in a position to give it. I stood up, grabbing my bag, done with their excuses. I need to think about this, but let me be clear. I don't owe you anything. Not after what you did. Mark called after me as I walked away. You're making a mistake, Megan. Family helps family. I didn't look back, my heart pounding as I pushed through the coffee shop door and stepped onto the street. My phone buzzed in my pocket and I pulled it out, half expecting another message from Christine. Instead, it was a number I didn't recognize. The text was short, but it stopped me in my tracks. Is this Megan Riley? This is Brandon Peterson. Mom told me about you today. Can we talk? I stared at the screen, my breath catching. Brandon, my half-brother, the one I'd never met, knew I existed and he was reaching out. Suddenly, this wasn't just about Christine and Mark anymore. Brandon's text was still on my mind as I drove away from that coffee shop after confronting Christine and Mark, my hands gripping the wheel to keep from shaking. My half-brother, a stranger I'd never met, knew I existed and he wanted to talk. It felt like the ground was shifting under me, knowing the family who'd erased me was starting to crack apart. I couldn't stop thinking about how Christine and Mark, the parents who'd kicked me out at 17 for their new kids, were now begging for my money to fix their mess. Mark's failing real estate deals, their kids' college tuition, all of it. I texted Brandon back that night, suggesting we meet at a diner near his campus, just us, no parents, to figure out what he knew and what he wanted. 3 days later, I was sitting in a booth at the diner, sipping coffee, when Brandon walked in. He was tall with Christine's eyes, but a tense, guarded vibe that hit me hard. It was like looking at myself at his age. He slid in across from me, messing with the zipper on his jacket, and we just stared at each other for a second. You're Megan, he said, his voice rough like he was testing the words. Mom and Dad told me you're my sister, that they sent you away when you were a teenager. I nodded, keeping my tone steady. Sent away is polite. They threw me out at 17, handed me $500 and told me to survive on my own so they could focus on you, Kayla, and Lucas. Brandon's face fell and he leaned forward, his hands balling into fists on the table. That's screwed up. I didn't know, none of us did. They always acted like we were their only kids. Why didn't you ever come find us? The question cut deep, but I didn't flinch. They didn't want me around Brandon. Mark stood in the doorway, blocking me out, while Christine stood there, pregnant with Lucas, saying I was old enough to handle it. After that, I assumed you'd never heard of me. He shook his head, his voice breaking. We hadn't. Mom only told us after your meeting with them. She said you're loaded now that you could pay for our college, but Dad lost it when she brought you up. They've been at each other's throats ever since. That stopped me cold, and I pushed him to explain. Brandon looked down, then let it all out. After I walked out of the coffee shop, Christine and Mark went home and had a blowout fight. Mark was pissed that Christine told the kids about me, saying it messed up their plan to get my money quietly. Brandon overheard them arguing in the living room, Mark shouting that I was a problem who'd never help unless they kept my existence hidden, while Christine insisted they needed me to cover his bad real estate investments and the kids' tuition, maybe $200,000 a year. Brandon said Kayla stormed off to her room, and Lucas started asking who I was, but they brushed him off. I went digging. Brandon said, his voice low. Found Mom's old notebook in the garage. It had your name. Said they took $3,000 from your savings before kicking you out to pay for stuff when I was a baby. I called them out, and they didn't even try to lie. My stomach twisted, the same fury from the coffee shop roaring back. Christine and Mark hadn't just thrown me out, they'd stolen my college fund, $3,000 I'd scraped together to prop up their new life, while I was working double shifts to eat. What did they say when you confronted them? I asked, barely keeping my voice even. Brandon sighed, looking exhausted. Dad said it was their call, that you didn't need it since you were leaving anyway. Mom just kept saying they were desperate back then. I don't know what to believe anymore. His words hit like a punch. This kid was caught in the same betrayal I'd faced, questioning the parents he thought he knew. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. Brandon, this isn't your fault. You didn't do this. I'm sorry you're stuck in the middle. He looked at me, his eyes searching. Why even meet me? After everything, why give a damn about us? It was a good question, one I wasn't sure I could answer fully. You're not Christine or Mark, I said. You, Kayla Lucas, you didn't choose to replace me, but I'm not here to bail out your parents either. He nodded like he got it, and we sat there, the silence heavy but not uncomfortable. Over the next few days, I reached out to Kayla and Lucas too. Kayla, a college sophomore, met me at a cafe. She was reserved, almost cold, but asked why I'd been hidden all these years. I laid it out. How Christine and Mark chose their new family over me, took my savings, and left me homeless at 17. She didn't say much, just stared at her coffee, but her hands shook when she said, I'm sorry, they did that. Lucas, still in high school, was different. Curious, talkative, meeting me at the diner with a million questions. Did you ever think about us? He asked, slurping a soda. I didn't know you existed, I admitted. I was too busy surviving. Talking to them made me realize I wanted to help, not for Christine or Mark, but for these kids who were as blindsided as I'd been. During a call with Dr. Patricia Sullivan, I worked through it. I could set up a trust for their tuition, I told her, but with rules, so Christine and Mark can't touch it. Patricia liked the idea, suggesting I tie it to conditions that kept me involved. I ran it by Heather, who was all in. Make them work for it, she said. Part-time jobs at your company teach them what you learned the hard way. I loved it. It wasn't charity, it was accountability. I got my lawyer to draft a trust fund tuition paid directly to the schools, a small stipend for expenses, but only if Brandon, Kayla, and Lucas worked 15 hours a week at Riley Hayes Properties, doing admin or shadowing site managers. I also wanted quarterly check-ins with them, no parents allowed. It felt fair, a way to support them while keeping Christine and Mark at arm's length. I texted Brandon asking if he and his siblings could meet me at my office to discuss it, just us. He replied within minutes, "We're there. Name the time." The day before the meeting, as I was reviewing the trust papers, my phone pinged with a voicemail from Mark. His voice was clipped, angry, and it sent a chill down my spine. "Megan, we need to talk now. You're stirring up trouble with the kids, and it stops here." I hit replay, my heart racing, wondering what he was planning. Mark's voicemail was still ringing in my ears as I walked into my office the next morning, the trust fund papers tucked under my arm, ready to meet Brandon, Kayla, and Lucas. His voice had been sharp, accusing me of stirring up trouble with the kids, like I was the one who'd lied to them for 18 years. I wasn't backing down. Christine and Mark had kicked me out at 17, stolen my $3,000 college fund, and now they were demanding I bail out their kids' tuition and Mark's sinking real estate business, expecting me to hand over $200,000 a year. Today, I'd lay out my terms for helping Brandon, Kayla, and Lucas, but it was going to be on my rules, not theirs. I sat up in the conference room, spreading out the trust documents, my hands steadied despite the knot in my stomach. Brandon arrived first, looking nervous but determined, followed by Kayla, who kept her arms crossed, her face unreadable. Lucas bounced in last, his backpack slung over one shoulder, glancing around like he was on a field trip. I started straight away, no small talk. Thanks for coming. I've got a plan to help with your college costs, but it's not a free ride. I'm setting up a trust to cover tuition paid directly to your schools, plus a small stipend for expenses, but you'll each work 15 hours a week at my company, Riley Hayes Properties filing site visits, whatever needs doing. You'll also meet with me every 3 months, just us to check in. Brandon nodded slowly like he was weighing it, but Kayla spoke up, her voice sharp. Why the work part? You're rich, can't you just pay it? I met her eyes, keeping my tone calm. Because I learned the hard way, nothing's handed to you. When your parents threw me out with $500, I worked 2 jobs to survive. This isn't about money, it's about you learning what it takes. Lucas piped up, curious. What kind of work? Like construction stuff. I smiled despite myself. Mostly office tasks, but you'll see how we build sustainable homes. It's a chance to learn something real. Before they could respond, the door swung open and my heart sank. Christine and Mark stormed in, uninvited, their faces a mix of anger and desperation. My assistant trailed behind, mouthing an apology, but Mark waved her off, planting himself at the table. Megan, this stops now, he barked, his voice echoing in the room. You don't get to pull our kids into your games. Christine stood beside him, her eyes red, clutching her purse like a shield. We told you to deal with us, not them, she said, her voice shaking. I felt my blood boil. These were the people who'd abandoned me, stolen from me, and now they were crashing my meeting to control the narrative again. I stood up, my voice low but firm. You don't get to decide who I talk to, not after what you did. You kicked me out at 17. Mark stood in the doorway while Christine watched, and you took my $3,000 to play happy family. Now you're here demanding I fix your mistakes. Brandon's head snapped up, his eyes darting to his parents. Is that true? You stole her money? Christine flinched, stammering. It wasn't like that. We needed it for you, for the family. Mark cut her off, glaring at me. Don't twist this, Megan. We're here for the kids' future, $70,000 a year per kid, plus my business needs a boost. You owe us that much. I laughed, a bitter sound that made Kayla shift uncomfortably. Oh, you. You left me homeless, and now you think I'm your bank. I'm offering to help Brandon, Kayla, and Lucas, not you. I turned to the kids, holding up the trust papers. This trust is for you, but it's my way. Work accountability, no handouts. Your parents get nothing. Lucas looked at his dad, confused. Why didn't you tell us about her? Why lie? Mark's face reddened, but he didn't answer, turning to me instead. You're poisoning them against us. If you don't pay up, we'll take out loans, sell the house. Think about what that does to them. That was it. The same guilt trip they'd tried at the coffee shop, using the kids to manipulate me. I slammed the papers down, my voice rising. You don't get to play victims. You chose to kick me out, to steal from me, to hide me from your kids. This trust is my offer, take it or leave it, but you're not touching a dime. Christine stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Megan, please, we're family. I know we hurt you, but can't we move past it? I looked at her, the woman who'd stood silent while I begged to stay, and felt nothing but clarity. Family doesn't abandon their kid. You made your choice. 18 years ago, I'm making mine now. Brandon stood up, his voice shaking but firm. I want in Megan. I'll work, do whatever. I don't want their loans or their lies. Kayla hesitated, then nodded. Me too. I'm not okay with what they did. Lucas looked torn, glancing at his parents, but muttered, I'll try it. Mark exploded, slamming his hand on the table. This is blackmail. You're buying their loyalty. I didn't blink. No, I'm giving them a choice, something you never gave me. I turned to the kids. We'll finalize this with my lawyer. You know where to find me. Christine reached for Brandon's arm, pleading, Don't do this. You don't know her. He pulled away, looking at me, then back at them. I know enough. I walked out, leaving Christine and Mark shouting behind me. my heart pounding but lighter than it had been in years. Back in my office, I called Heather, telling her everything. She laughed, saying, "You just rewrote their story, Megan, proud of you." That night, alone with my thoughts, I realized I'd done more than help the kids. I'd taken back my power. Christine and Mark could keep their guilt, their lies, their crumbling business. I had my company, my chosen family, Heather, Justin, Susan, and now maybe a new connection with Brandon, Kayla, and Lucas, built on truth, not obligation. The girl they'd thrown out with $500 was gone, replaced by someone who'd built a life they couldn't touch. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. If this story hit you, drop a comment about your own journey with family boundaries and hit that subscribe button for more real stories like mine.